Mayor.
Yes, yes.
It is wonderful to join you today, and I have a few questions that I'd like to ask, and I thank you for being willing to have a conversation.
Yes.
The first question really is around the whole notion of a tax increase.
Right.
When you start thinking about a tax increase, I know you recognize that people are already challenged, whether it's housing costs or higher grocery bill or increase in utility costs. And so some folks can ill afford to pay any additional money. So the question really is, what do we do about older people, people on fixed incomes who can't afford it? Because those who can afford it may not like it, but there are some who literally can't afford a 75 cents increase in their property.
I mean, I think that was really the thing that concerned me the most as we have been having the dialogue is how are those that literally can't afford it going to be able to get through? And what we came to realize is that the city does have a program that provides relief for seniors. So there is a tax relief program for seniors and those that are on fixed incomes. And so we certainly want to make sure that they understand that program and know that it's available and how they can apply. So we'll be spreading that information. And as we came to the conclusion that this was necessary, it really came down to the question of what is the Memphis that we want to see? We have been in a situation where we haven't increased taxes in 12 years. And we have a budget, this year's budget that we're in currently, right now, that was balanced based on using fund balance. And I firmly believe that in order for us to really get to where we want to go as a city, we're going to have to ensure long-term fiscal stability. And in order to get there, we must find more revenues. And ideally, we're a community that's growing, where the tax base is continuing to grow, where more people are moving and prices or the property values are continuing to increase. But we haven't found ourselves in that situation. And so I think that we have to change the narrative. We have to make investments that add more value to the city and make it even more investable.
So for that young couple that just got married, for folks who live in deep South Memphis and North Memphis, just John Q. citizen, what's in it for them? What can they expect to see as a direct result of an increase in their property taxes?
Based on the proposal that we've put forth to City Council, certainly it covers the hole, it covers the gap that we found ourselves with in the budget. But we are also adding value. We're putting more investment into our transit system so more people can get to and from work in the places that they need to be. We're also making deep investments in public safety. We're going to be investing in a mesh camera network that's going to be able to help identify where crimes are happening so that we can apprehend those committing the crimes quicker. We're going to be investing in our young people, making investments to keep them occupied, things like game rooms in our community centers, midnight basketball, things that are going to occupy their times during those idle hours where we know a lot of the negative activity takes place, after school programming, things that are going to really help our young people begin to find alternative paths to the life of crime that we've seen. And then lastly, it's making our community more attractive. We know that we have far too many corridors that are suffering from blight, litter, overgrown grass. If you look at some of our corridors, like coming from the airport, we know that there are some things that we can do to dramatically improve the way it looks and feels aesthetically. And so what we're looking to do is have neighborhood-based cleanup crews. These are crews that are going to be cutting the grass, picking up litter, but there'll be crews that are from those communities, that will own those communities and making sure that they're cleaning them on a very regular basis. And so we'll be providing job opportunities for community members while solving a problem of blight, which we know contributes to the negative activity that we see.
Absolutely. And as I thought about individuals in the community making a sacrifice What is the city doing? Did you explore all available options before you decided that this was what you needed? And there are two parts to this. So that's one part. The other part is, what is the amount of the deficit? I've heard 30 million, I've heard 53 million. You know, what is that number, and how did we get to it, and which one will we settle on, so that everybody really clearly understands what the deficit.
So what is the city doing? We're certainly going to be looking for other opportunities to secure more revenue. We believe that there's more that we can do to collect on collections. So we're going to be engaging some firms that can help us recoup more, so people with outstanding tickets and things of that nature, we want to make sure that those outstanding fines get paid. We think that there's roughly $10 million or so that we can secure there. But we don't know for sure, but we believe that we could probably receive around that amount. In terms of the gap, it has moved. It moves over time. And so when I started, just a quick history, when I started in the role, I met with the whole team and I asked them to bring me a budget that requires no tax increase. I was very, very clear on that, no tax increase. After a couple of weeks of work, they brought me a budget, and that budget was roughly $70 million over the revenues. And I was like, how can this be? What's happening? And so I met with every division, every single division I met with personally, asked them to reduce their budget by $10%. And as we combed through those budgets, some of them had reduced, most of them didn't get to 10%. They were somewhere around 6-7%. We went through every line. We got the gap down to roughly $30 million. And then we were hit with two additional things. We were hit with what they call the actuarially determined contribution, ADC, which is essentially a contribution that we must make for our pension fund. That increased from last year by $14 million. So that's an additional $14 million on top of the 30. And then we had some positions that were not budgeted in the last fiscal year to the tune of $9.6 million, which took our overall gap up to $53 million. Our thinking was, if we're going to ask for a tax increase, we can't just fill the gap. We got to add more value. And so we identified what were the priorities. Obviously, the number one thing for everyone is public safety. So we included activities that we thought will enhance public safety. So those are the programs for our young people, the blight mitigation, the mesh camera network, continuing to support our police department and fire department as we have always done. And we put forth this budget proposal because we believe that it will help us, put us on the path to create the Memphis that we believe our community deserves.
Those all sound so good, and I certainly hope we can achieve all of those, because this is a great city.
It is.
I love my city, and I make no apology for it, and I know you don't
shouldn't.
either.
Yeah, you shouldn't.
One of the things that I did want to ask you about is, you know, having worked and led the chamber, it is just a fact when real estate people say to you or say to others, if we have, because we have the highest property tax rate in the state, collective, combined tax rate in the state, they say it makes it more difficult to attract new investment, and we need new investment to foster growth, because those are taxes. That's additional tax revenue.
Right.
So how do you respond to those who say, we're hurting economic development, it is going to allow us to have issues in our attraction strategy? How do you address that?
Yeah, it's a challenge. Certainly, I understand that there is a point where the taxes can be so high that we push people away from our community. We certainly don't want to be there. But I also believe that there's a point where we're not making enough investment to recruit, where the level of service gets to the point that it's so bad that businesses leave anyway. And so the question is, how do we get to the equilibrium where we are making the appropriate amount of an investment to attract more? Because if we were attracting more, if we were growing over the past 12 years, it's been 12 years since we've increased taxes. If we were growing over that period, then we might not have to do this because our revenues would be increasing. But we have been stagnant, unfortunately. And that's not anyone's fault.
And the
but that's
pandemic
fact.
didn't help.
And the pandemic absolutely didn't help. In fact, before the pandemic, we were trending in the right direction.
Yes,
we
you're
were
right.
trending up, but we lost a lot of those gains during the pandemic. And so we are where we are. And so my goal is to make sure that we create an environment where we are investable. If we don't clean up this community, if we don't make it look attractive, I've been on all of not all of them, but many of those economic development tours and taking executives around the community. And I know that we try to jump on the expressway as quick as possible because we don't want to drive down certain corridors. That should not be.
Absolutely.
We don't want people from outside to see what's happening inside the community. What about the people that live inside the community? We want to make those corridors attractive for those people that live there and those that are willing to invest in our city. And I think it's time for us to make these investments and put our community on the path where we are really trending in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah, very good. The other question that I had is, you ran on a platform of creativity, energy, enthusiasm, and new ideas. And along with that, part of my concern is we need to be able to create new revenue streams. So from a creative and innovative standpoint, do you have any ideas? Because property taxes and sales taxes are sort of the same old song, but what about the identification of innovative, entrepreneurial, new revenue streams that allow us to create another pot of money in some other way?
Yeah, I'm certainly going to continue working hard to identify what those other revenue opportunities can and will be. I've received some recent information on some things they're doing in Pittsburgh and in Detroit now, where they're looking at like a split land tax valuation and how they're taxing vacant properties at higher levels. And we're certainly going to be creative, but we are in a situation where we need an urgent solution. Our next fiscal year starts July 1. And so as we explore those other alternatives, many of which will require state law changes in order to allow us to do it, we need to find a solution. And so my goal is to continue to be innovative and creative, but also practical. We have a challenge, one that I hadn't really covered in this conversation is the fact that we have a reserve fund that's at $100 million right now. By the end of this year, it'll be at $100 million. In order to maintain our ratings, we must be at a minimum 80 million and ideally at 140 million. And we pulled from our reserves to balance this current year's budget. So it's going down. We need to get it on the right trajectory. And so that means that we have to stabilize ourselves fiscally right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were talking to young people, and I know you do all the time, and they would ask you, so Mayor, I know you want this property tax increase, but what's your advice or wisdom for us? How can we help you do your job better?
Well, I would tell young people, I want them to stay committed to our city. I know that they are exploring a lot of different things in their lives, going to college, trade schools, or wherever they're going in their lives. I want to keep Memphis top of mind because at the end of the day, my goal is to grow our tax base. If we had all of our talent that's from Memphis, that lives in all of the other cities, New York, LA, Miami, all those different places, if we just had them home, our economy would begin booming overnight because of the creative talent and all of the knowledge capital that they bring to this community. And so I want to encourage our young people to continue to pour into Memphis and keep keep it top of mind, because we are going places and we need them to be a part of this change.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing my part.
You are.
My kids are coming back,
Yes.
and they're doing really great things, and they're happy to be home. So for all of those folks out there who have negative things to say about this market, some of our best and brightest young talent
Right.
is coming back to Memphis, so they better get on the bandwagon.
I
They
agree.
better get on the bandwagon. The other question that I have for you, and thanks for being so generous with your time and your comments. When I think about the future, and when I think about, do you anticipate that there will be additional tax increases after the first 4 years of your administration? And if so, what timeline, what's the sort of scheduled timeline that you view it? And
Yeah,
I know
I,
a lot
I
of
sure
it
hope
depends.
not. I sure hope not. I mean, my goal was to propose a tax increase that we believe will help to get us stabilized and put us on a trajectory where we can continue to contribute to that fund balance that I was talking about, while making the investments in the community that we believe will be game changers. We know that in 2 years, we have an additional opportunity where we will have paid off enough debt. We call it the debt cliff. We will have paid off enough debt such that our debt payment drops by about $50 million. So that's another chunk of revenues that will be there and available for us to prioritize. And at that point in time, the council may decide even to consider reducing. But at this point in time, we have an immediate need that must be addressed. And so I firmly believe that making this investment, making this decision now is the right decision to stabilize our path for the future.
And what if you don't get your 75-cent property tax?
If we don't get it, certainly we're going to continue to work hard. I love this city. I got into this work because I believe in Memphis, and I want to do all that I can to help elevate it. It's certainly going to be very, very challenging, and we'll be operating on a bare bones budget, and I think we will still be having the same conversation next year. It's essentially deferring the inevitable.
And how can regular grassroots citizens help to support the work that you're attempting to do?
Be vocal. Talk to your friends, your family, your colleagues about why you think it's important we make more investments into our city, and certainly speak to your elected officials as we have these important discussions over the next few weeks.
And how does it look? How does the landscape look
I mean,
for approval?
there are a lot of opinions, of course. I mean, that's the process. I mean,
That's
I certainly
politics.
understand that there are those in the business community that are concerned about the impact on
Yes.
recruitment for business. There are those in the neighborhoods and communities that are yearning to see more investment in their neighborhoods and the areas where they are occupying. And then there are others on fixed income that that it's hard for them to fathom having to give more. And so there is a spectrum of opinions, but I think we all are in agreement that we must do something.
Yeah.
That status quo is untenable, that we cannot continue on the same trajectory.
Yeah.
Many times our conversation is around public safety, but I think we all know that in order to truly get the public safety we want, it's going to take those investments in the suppression and the investments in that intervention and prevention, and that's what this budget does.
The beautiful thing about what you've said is that all of the responsibility doesn't just rest in city government.
Not at all.
That all of us as regular citizens, whether it's young people, older people, senior citizens, pastors, all of us, business leaders, all of us have a responsibility to improve this city. We know it rests, centrally with you, but there's a lot of support that will be required to make this the kind of city we all know that it can be.